webinar.
Mm-hmm.
It's not really why I did it then. So, hey guys, looks like we're live. Katie and I are just chatting. So,
hey, welcome to the webinar.
Yeah, we're excited to be with you guys today. So our audience today is likely primarily team owners or single agents. In fact, I would love to know who's here. So type in the chat box who you are, what your role is, and that'll give us some context. But my name is Anna. I used to be an inside sales agent. I've also been a sales manager, a training director, and now I work with the MAPS ISA coaching program. So really excited about that. And really it's a lead generation program. So we've got people in there that aren't ISAs, people that say, we just want to get better at lead gen, lead conversion, all that stuff. So that's really my one main thing now. And then I have Katie. So Katie, tell everybody who you are.
Hi, everyone. I'm Katie Collins out of Austin, Texas. I'm an agent with the Heil Real Estate Group in Austin, and I'm also a coach in this program. I was the former listing agent for the Heil Group for a couple of years, and now I do all sorts of fun projects for Tim Heil, and as well as coaching. So likewise, I love this program, and we get to have a lot of fun helping people in all different positions in a team, really with lead generation. So it's a lot of fun. I'm excited about today's webinar.
Yeah, I am too. And one reason we decided to do this topic is probably, and Katie, you can tell me what you get, but I find that the most common question I get is from people saying, how do I know when it's time to hire an ISA? Or I seem to keep failing at this whole ISA thing. Can you help me figure out what's going on? And I've even heard it said that more people are failing with ISAs than succeeding. And the thing is, it does not have to be that way. I think there's a mindset shift, and there's some specific things we can do to help you succeed. Because it is something Gary talks about. It's a proven model. We just have to wrap our minds around the right way to do it. And there's more than one right way to do it. There's some definite not right ways to do it. So we'll get into some of that today. And Katie and I were talking, we have content in mind, but we're also going to pivot to what you guys want to get out of this, because this calls for you guys. So if you would right now just chat into the chat box with what you want to make sure you get out of this within the next 45 minutes to an hour or so. And then that will help us kind of direct where we take this conversation. So,
yeah.
So why don't we just start with how do people know it's time to hire an ISA? Because that comes before the hire, right? So what are some of the signs that it's time to pull the trigger?
Consistency. So for me, that means you are consistently selling units every month. On an average between somewhere in 4 and 6. It might look a little different for your market, your price point, but consistency is key here. By being consistent in lead generating and selling houses, you're going to actually have a budget to bring on an ISA. So that kind of leads into the other point here. You have to make sure that you have it within your budget, lead by revenue, to afford yet another lead source. So It's really a good way, and I've heard you say this and mention it before, Anna, it's really a good way to think of your ISA as yet another lead source.
Yeah.
So we know our lead gen budget, 10%, right? Do we have that revenue in place to support another lead generation source?
Yes. And we'll talk about that in a minute as far as what kind of ROI should you expect from the role if you're thinking of them as a lead source. And we can say that having been ISAs, right? Like we're kind of dehumanizing it for a second. Yeah, really, that's how we need to think about it. Is it's like paying for any other lead source that you pay for. That's really what it is. You're paying for this lead source, and it's not just the person and their income. You know, a lot of them have base pay, and we'll talk about all that in a second. But it's also what tools do they need? So dialers, all of those things you want to take into account. So Katie, like when you say that people should have units coming in, they should have the income. If somebody's sitting here thinking, how do I know I've hit that mark, that I've had enough units that I need to hire an ISA, what would your answer be to that?
I would say, ideally, the number of units I've seen is 4 to 6. But what you really want to back out from that information is, what does my P&L look like? What does my 10% spend for lead generation look like? Once you have a better clarity around that number, we can then go in and talk about what the average pay is for an ISA and determine, yes, I can afford to not only pay them right? But I'll actually have some lead opportunity for them. For example, if you have them doing inbound leads, you want the listings to generate those inbound leads as well for them. Yeah. So what I've seen traditionally is about 4 to 6 listings per month.
Per month? 4 to 6 per month?
Okay. Per month is about the sweet spot to start to leverage and get another lead source in there for yourself. Yeah. And then beyond that, you want to make sure you've actually leveraged yourself pretty well so far. And what that means to me is you have an admin. You have somebody helping you with your contract to close, with your listing management, because ultimately getting this other lead source in is supposed to get you more time to go out and sell more houses. Yeah. So you're making the absolute most amount of money on the houses that you sell yourself and you procure yourself by the lead gen activity you're taking. So you don't want to start cutting away your profit yet. You want to leverage yourself out as best as you can. And by utilizing an admin, you're able to leverage yourself at an even higher level first before bringing on an ISA. Does that make sense, Anna? Am I saying that pretty clear, you think?
Yeah, no, I think that it makes a lot of sense. And that's what Gary is talking about in his conversations about the models and the different levels. If you're on this call and you're not sure what we're talking about, where these models come from, it's Gary Keller in the Millionaire Real Estate Agent book. I have mine. Oh, my computer is sitting on it. It's raised to the computer for this video, so it's right underneath my computer. But Gary talks about the levels of ultimately getting to level 7. There you go, where you are leveraged. Awesome. And he talks about your first hire should really be an admin. And what I've seen in coaching people through this program is people tend to skip that step. They seem, not everybody, but there seems to be this mindset of, if I can just get more units, that'll come from the lead gen, and then that will solve my problems. But the thing is, that will create yet even more admin work. And I feel like I can share this openly because the team I come from, my team owner has talked about this openly. But one mistake our team made at the Haro group was we added more salespeople without having enough back-end support to handle all the sales coming in. And so we actually are still paying the consequences of that because our marketing wasn't what it could be. Our sphere follow-up wasn't what it could be. And a lot of those systems that come that actually produce more leads, they weren't there because we didn't have a solid operations person, or I should say not enough operations help for the salespeople we were adding. So make sure you definitely have operations before you start adding this particular role.
Yeah, and if you are listening to this right now and you're thinking, well, okay, I'm still going to push that off a little bit because I'm really good at my own, whatever it is, let's say listing management or contract to close. Let's say you actually like it and you've built out great systems around it and you just think it's so easy and you can do it in 5 minutes. I don't care. I don't care how easy it is for you, how much you enjoy doing it. You need to think of it as you can no longer afford to do $15 hour work. You can't. You've got to push that off your plate. You're the CEO of your company. This is your business. And you need to be spending your time in the most productive way possible. So ask yourself, is this the highest and best use of my time doing the admin role? And if you're consistently selling 4 to 6 units a month, I can tell you right now, it's not. It's not the best use of time.
Yeah, and just think if you're selling at that level, even 3 units a month or 2 units a month. I mean, think of what you could do if you weren't doing all that. I mean, that's so time consuming. So that's really your first step, is to hire an appropriate admin operations person. And then after that would come an ISA down the line. Also, another good benchmark, Katie mentioned the 4 to 6 listings per month. Another good benchmark I've seen is 2 to 3 agents per 1 ISA. So some of you on this call might already have an ISA and you're thinking, when is it time to hire the next one? And we just find that's usually a good work balance. If you have a solid ISA, they're usually going to keep 2 to 3 agents pretty busy. And then you may, if you have more agents than that, it may be time to go ahead and hire another ISA. Now, I will say all this is very customized to your team, right? Katie and I know this from coaching in the ISA coaching program. Is there's all different scenarios that people come to us with, different budgets, different staffing levels, and we want to meet you where you are. So this is part of why we have a coaching program, is so that we can help you get this right for your team. Because honestly, Katie's team, the Hio group, and my team, the Haro group, we approach ISAs in slightly different ways, and they're both successful, and it's what worked for the team, for that team. And so just keep that in mind as we're talking about this, is that you do have to customize it.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we've gotten more clarity around consistently selling houses, have an admin helping us. Let's talk about CRM.
Yes.
You have to have a CRM.
Tell the passion is there. Yes. So tell us about the CRM. What did you mean when you say we have to have a CRM?
Client relationship management tool. You have to have a place where you're putting all of your leads, all of your database. You have a sales pipeline, and that you have to be using it consistently.
Yes.
Otherwise, you're going to hire somebody to come into it and say, hey, this is a big jumbled mess, and I have no rules around it or structure, and just figure it out. You're not setting them up to have success, which in turn means you're not going to get the best ROI on your spend for that lead source, for that ISA.
Yeah.
Now, I'll tell you, we have tons of people in our program right now who are hitting a wall right here that we're helping them push through because they did not yet set up a CRM at a high level. And that's fine. We offer coaching around it. It's actually one of my favorite aspects of the coaching that we do.
Yeah.
But if you're at home and you're thinking, okay, I want to start working towards getting an ISA, do yourself a favor now and start to organize your CRM and use it.
Yes.
Use it.
Yes. Yes. And I'll add to that too. It will also depend on the type of person you hire and the background that they have, right? Because you might be in a place in your business where it's like, okay, I'm hearing that this is ideal and I'm not there. I'm already flying 1,000 miles per hour. The thought of slowing down to figure out my database is overwhelming to me, even though I get what you're saying. And so know that that's where if you were to find an ISA that already has experience in a role like this, they could actually come in. I'm thinking of Sarah John. She helped him clean up his database. I know when Haro hired me in another career, I had been a sales manager. I'd been an inside sales agent. I had set up lead flow systems before coming to real estate. So when I walked into the Haro group, and they were fairly organized, yet there wasn't one main CRM. It wasn't hard for me to wrap my head around that and quickly figure it out and get a system in place because that was my background. So know that if you're not able to do this the way Katie just described, because you're already deep into it and you're like, I just need help, maybe, yeah, then I would say look for an ISA that has experience doing this type of thing before. I know from coaching there are a lot of times where the CRM is what trips people up. People say, I'm so stressed. My team owner keeps changing the CRM. I don't know what to do. And you got to, again, just look at what's the experience they're bringing in. What do I have already going on? Like, does their experience match the level of chaos or not chaos that I have going on right now? Can they come in and work with what I've got? Mm-hmm. So that's another thing to consider.
Yeah, absolutely. And since, the CRM is really a tool that we utilize to help us in our business, it's a good time to talk about some other tools to have in place for your ISA. Right off the bat, I think of an auto dialer.
Yes.
An auto dialer is huge, guys. Not only does it help with a person's efficiency on the phone and getting through lists and to call everybody, but I would say my biggest advantage that I gain from utilizing an auto dialer is my mindset and morale.
Yes. You only have to have willpower one time because you only have to dial the dialer one time. Just one time.
Yes. Yeah. And the great thing is I have no idea who's not answering. So I don't let that play into my mindset thinking 6 people haven't answered. This is a waste of my time. No, it's just silent until it actually connects with somebody and answers the phone. Yeah. While it's silent and I have my noise canceling headphones on, I'm listening to music. I've got my scripts up. I'm in the zone. I've got, probably a Red Bull, not always the healthiest, but I'm caffeinated. Yeah. So it's just a huge game changer when it comes to your mindset and morale. And then of course, efficiency, it's another level.
Yeah.
Right?
And write this down, everybody. Average efficiency is 6 to 8 contacts an hour. So that's 1 every 8 to 10 minutes of an actual live contact. Now, I will say if they get someone live on the phone and they're set an appointment, it could cut that 6 to 8 down. But hey, they just set an appointment, so it's okay. Yeah, on average, you want 6 to 8. So if you're listening to this and you are an ISA or you have ISAs now and you're like, and I see this a lot in coaching where people are struggling to hit their contacts, you got to look at, okay, have I given them the tool of a dialer? Not that you have to have a dialer to hit 6 to 8 contacts an hour. It just makes it a lot easier, like Katie was just saying. Another piece I want to add in here is, and this could be a painful moment, so everybody just stop and think about this for a minute. But Harvard actually studied this, and they found, and they did it with over 15,000 leads. It was a 3-year study, so we can trust that it was accurate. They actually went to redo the study recently because the data was from a couple years ago, and they found that the data was actually the same. And so they didn't complete the whole study because it was like, oh, it's just like it was years ago. So we can trust this data. And what they found is that most sales reps don't even attempt to call 1 time, yet the magic number is 6 times. If you call someone 6 times, there is a 90% chance of contact. So I want all of you listening, you're on this webinar thinking, when do I know it's time to hire an ISA? And I just want you to think about how many leads did you have come in the past month? Just the past month. If that's an overwhelming number to you, even just take it back to this last week and just take a minute and think through, how many leads have I had come in either in the past week or in the past month, whichever is easier for you to think about. And then I want you to ask yourself, did you have time to proactively call all of those leads 6 times? And let's say an average of 4, because you're not going to, some people will pick up sooner, some people will take to the 6 times. So let's say an average of 3 to 4 times. If you did not do that, you have left money on the table. So just let that sink in for a minute. So also, if you're living in that world where you have a lot of leads coming in, it may actually make sense to cut back on leads or hire an ISA. Because if you have leads coming in that you're not proactively calling, you know, the 3 to 6 times sweet spot, you are leaving money on the table. It's a waste of money to bring the leads in because you're not getting to them to convert them. So that could be another sign and another reason to have a dialer.
Yeah, I mean, the dialer for follow-up in that specific situation, how many of us stop calling because we feel like we're bothering somebody at call attempt 3?
Right.
When you're hand dialing, you're hyper aware that this is your 3rd time calling them. Let me tell you, you throw it in a dialer and that's your call list for the day because it's in your follow-up queue. You don't even know. You don't even know until it pops up, and then guess what? You're on the phone talking to them. So you don't have the opportunity to stop and say, oh, I'm just going to push this out another week, another week, another week. I'm harassing them, or whatever story you're feeding yourself. The auto dialer eliminates so much of that and helps that. I love it.
And what I love about a dialer too, I didn't know we would talk so much about dialers, but hey, this is good. One thing I love about a dialer is you can pre-record your voicemails, and there's actually a 5 voicemail strategy. You don't leave a voicemail the first time, and then voicemails 2 through 6 you do. And that helps with your callbacks. So they're not all, hey, it's Anna, call me back. And then the next day, hey, it's Anna, call me back. There's actually a value add. So it might sound something like, hi, this is Anna from the Haro Group. We usually sell houses 2 times faster than our competitors in the area. Call me back today so I can help sell your home quickly for you. My number is blah, blah, blah. And then tomorrow they'll get a different value add. So there's an art to how you leave voicemails. We're not going to get into that now. That's part of what we cover in the program. But just know that there's a lot that goes into this to arm them to be successful and help you get really fantastic ROI. So do you have anything else to add to that, Katie? If not, we'll talk about ROI and how long it takes to get up to speed.
Auto dialer, a place for your people to make the calls, tools, CRM. No, I mean, I think that's it for tools. Obviously, numbers to call. That's important.
Yeah, we want some numbers. Absolutely. Yeah, and just real quick of what their workspace should look like is typically you want to have a desk, either a stand-up desk or a desk that is, they call it Vari desk, V-A-R-I desk. I'm sure there's other brands out there. That's just the one I'm familiar with. But it can lower or raise, so you can sit down if you want. I liked being able to sit down as an ISA. It hurt my back if I was standing all day. But then I could raise it up when it was time to make calls. It just gets the energy higher. And you want noise-canceling headphones, because I hear a lot of ISAs say, I love my team. Remember, these are people. So let's help them out, right? They love their team. They're people. And so a lot of them say, I'm distracted because I want to talk, or I heard this conversation. So even if they're in a room that's not real loud, the noise-canceling headphones will even help them stay focused. So noise-canceling headphones, CRM, dialer, stand-up desk. You also want to have a wall. In fact, I'll just show you guys real quick if you can see my wall. So I'm not an ISA anymore. I am a coach, but up on my wall up there, I have a whole bunch of questions that I like to use in coaching. And that same concept you want with your ISAs is they need to have somewhere. If I'm on a call and I'm thinking, this is a challenging situation, and I wonder what would help me continue, help this client unlock whatever we need to do in this coaching call, I can just look at my wall and there's a whole list of questions to pull from. And you want that type of thing for your ISA as well, so that they can pull from stuff. I know Katie had an awesome script wall. Tell everybody how you learned your scripts real quick, because this is part of an ISA hire. So tell them how you learned your scripts.
So I recognized that in order for me to do really well in my role, I needed to know my scripts. And so I just attacked that idea of memorizing, internalizing my scripts at a high level. And what I did was I had the giant Post-its, like a huge Post-it board that had sticky on the top of it. And I would write out, for example, an objection in red, and then I'd write the handle in green, and I'd write out the specific speech patterns I wanted to emphasize, such as an embedded command or tie down, in another color. And I stuck them all over my wall in my little shoebox of a space, it felt like, everyone's next to each other. And I would just look at those and chant them. I would record myself saying them. I would handwrite them out so that they were always present, and it would just seep into my mind. And eventually I memorized them, probably within about a 2-week span. And also my rainmaker, Tim Hylas, he'd walk by, he'd say, "Hey, Katie," and I'd turn and look at him, and he would read one of the objections behind me as a quiz, and so right there on my feet, here's the response. And that helped me tremendously.
Well, and that goes to, he inspected what he expected of you, right? And that's where, our goal is to help you succeed with ISAs. I think one way we see a lot of people fail with ISAs is they don't inspect. So here's a script book, good luck. And we're not inspecting it. So I think that has a big part of what helped you be successful, Katie, was his inspection. And I like what you said about the scripts are on the wall, and after about 2 weeks you memorized. Same thing, I'm constantly changing out the wall here. So if you're lead generating, which probably most of you, if not all of you, are or should be, let that help you, because when you're looking at it while you're on the phone, it just gets in your brain, and eventually you just know it, just partially just because it's right there and you're looking at it all day. And then I like to erase mine, and every couple months put different stuff up there. So it's a great way to build skill. Yeah. So let's talk about what to expect once I've hired this ISA. So another common question is, how long should I take to see return? Wow, that's a big topic. So first, let's talk about how to figure out your ROI expectation. And then, Katie, I'll pass it to you to talk through by when should you expect to see that show up. So I've heard, I'm just going to be candid. So I've heard a lot of people, if that's okay with everybody, I've heard a lot of people say 2, 10, 40. I went 2 appointments a day, 10 a week, 40 a week, or 40 a month. And I don't know all the places that comes from. But what happens, and I know from being an ISA, and I would consider myself a skilled ISA. I had done it for years pre-industry. I had trained it. Like, I knew what I was doing. And I would average 7 to 12 appointments a week. Now, remember, a lot of that's going to depend on the size of your team and how many leads you have coming in. But the point I'm making is you probably don't need anywhere near that to see good ROI on the role. So let's just walk through that for a second. Typical pay for an ISA is, and it depends where you live, but I've seen $1,500 up to $3,000 a month for an ISA base pay. Average is $2,000. That's definitely the most common thing that I see is $2,000 a month base pay. And this is for someone who's handling inbound leads, outbound leads, and they're a true inside sales agent. They're there to lead generate, lead convert. And then a range of 5 to 10% commission on anything that they bring in that closes. So one day I just thought, let me have some fun with this, because how many deals would an ISA need to bring in to be a good ROI? And again, it's going to depend on where you live, what your price point is, because all that will impact what that commission looks like for the ISA. And they would need to be licensed to get commission. But when I started playing with the numbers, I figured, well, $2,000 a month base pay. Then if you are giving them, 5 to 10% commission, that could range. If you have a $10,000 commission, that's $1,000 if you're doing the 10%. So kind of on the high end here. So that means if they had one closing, you just paid them $3,000. If they had 4 closings, you just paid, or 2 closings, you just paid them $4,000. And you can quickly start to see the team is making so much money from that one closing based per what's going out to the ISA. And what I find for most teams that I work with, they usually, if they just got 2 to 3 closings a month from that ISA, they would have fantastic ROI, 5 to 10% ROI, depending on their location and price point. So what I want all of you guys to think about is, what is your minimum ROI expectation? Because what I see is a lot of people hire an ISA and they lay out these expectations of, I need 2 appointments a day, 10 a week, 40 a month. And if you're not doing that, you don't hit our standards and you're out of here. Whereas if you peel back and look at how many closings they were bringing you for that amount of work, it's insane ROI for 2, 10, 40. And so what I want you guys to think through is, what's the minimum ROI that you want from this role? Is it 3% or 3 times ROI? Is it 5 times ROI? And then do the math and figure out, okay, if I need 5 times ROI from this role, how many closings would you need to bring me to equal that ROI amount? And it's probably going to be a number that surprises you. It's usually not a very big number at all. And that becomes their minimum expectation, because your standard, your expectation, you need to be thinking, if this person did not hit it, that means that I would actually not have them on my team anymore. Victor says hi. Smiling, Katie, I'm guessing that's at the dog. Yeah. And so if they're not bringing in that much closing to cover that ROI, they're not on the team. And so I see people where they're like, man, I laid out this expectation. Now what do I do? Because I have this talented person and I don't really want to let them go because the ROI is so good and it can hurt your leadership. So tell me, Katie, if that made sense, because whenever I talk ROI and percentages and math on a screen on the computer, I get nervous that maybe it's getting lost in translation. So did that make sense?
I'm totally following you. Basically, one of my biggest pet peeves is I talk to agents who just wrote down the specific number that somebody on stage said that their ISA does, and then they take that as the holy grail to live by. And what we don't recognize is we have no idea who that ISA is calling.
Right. Exactly.
That ISA could be calling, 1,000 new expireds a day. And I'll tell you right now, the Austin market doesn't have that. Yeah. We don't have 1,000 expireds a day.
Yeah.
So you have to also consider your lead sources.
Yes.
Right. I'm not expecting to get an appointment a day when I just start calling circle prospecting, especially if I've been strategic and intentional about what neighborhoods I picked to call in circle prospecting, right? There's a lot of different layers to kind of peel back with this. And it's a really great exercise to do, is determine what's my minimum standards based on ROI, and then go from there with the lead gen sources as well.
Yeah. And what I find from working with a lot of team owners is they'll say, well, my minimum ROI is this. And it really usually is like 2 to 3 closings a month in order to make that number. And what I find is the talented ISAs, they don't even talk about 2 to 3. Their own personal goal is so much higher that it's not even, we don't even talk about the minimum goal, but it's just realizing, I think a lot of people out there may actually have been succeeding with the ISA role, but maybe even missed it because there wasn't that realization of how much income was coming from the amount of appointments that were being set. If you just need 2 to 3 closings a month, how many appointments do you really need to get that, right? And so again, what I do find is talent usually wants a lot more. So just get in your head what your ROI standard is. And then to Katie's point, your lead sources will impact. I feel the same way as you, Katie. I get super pet peeved. Like there's that Facebook group. If you guys aren't in it, join it. ISA Mastermind group on Facebook. It's been going now for like 5 years. People will post on there, I'm working on getting my standards. How many closings do you get a month? And I usually comment like, everyone that responds, please tell us how many leads you get per month. And what lead sources are you calling, and how many agents do you have to set appointments for? Because all of that makes a huge, huge difference.
Yeah.
Huge difference.
So to kind of go off this point from lead sources to number of appointments set, I think it's also incredibly imperative that if you are a rainmaker that already has, let's say, a buyer agent or another listing agent, or you already have a team, we have to recognize that you're adding yet another member to the team. And by doing so, work is going to increase for the other members, as well as communication.
Yes.
So communication increases when you just have two people, it's A to B. When you add another person's A, B, C, C to A, C to B, communication compounds exponentially with each member that you add. So it's really important to start thinking about how this new member is going to impact the other departments of the business as well.
Yeah.
So one thing I've noticed is I might have a team that's been doing a lot of listings from the Rainmakers database. Let's say the Rainmaker's been doing this 25 years. They've built an amazing database. Well, now they've hired an ISA and they want their listing agent to now go on expired, withdrawn for sell by owner appointments. They want their buyers to go on Zillow appointments. And previously it's been mainly database. That's a whole different ball game. It's a different animal. There's probably going to need to be some coaching with the agents as well, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I really want people to appreciate how much a different lead source may impact all the departments of your organization so that they can be best prepared for that. Again, we offer coaching around this. I just think before you even get into anything, knowing more about it is incredibly valuable and helpful.
Yeah.
So,
and it's, I mean, there's no way we could cover all the things in this call, but if you want to know more about the coaching program, go to isamapscoaching.com. We'll put it in the chat box as well. isamapscoaching.com, and you can find out more about the program there. Also, there's a webinars tab for past webinars that we've done. You can click on that and check out some free resources. We've got quite a few free resources in there for you. I can't say it. Also, if you look in the chat box right now, you'll see there's a link that says how to hire, train, and retain an ISA. We have this incredible guide that's been put together. You can click on that and download it. And it basically walks through some of the things we don't have time to get into on this call. Someone took it from past trainings we've done and really compiled it into one thing on how to hire, how do you actually keep them on your team, some different resources. So you can click on that there in the chat box. The download how to hire, train, retain, and then also isamapscoaching.com will tell you more about the program. So Katie, what else? And by the way, guys, type in your questions if you're here and you're thinking, I haven't heard this one nugget that I really hope to get out of today's webinar. Go ahead and type that into the chat box because we are into the second half and we want to make sure we get all that stuff covered.
Okay, there's one more thing I want to bring up. Okay.
Go for it.
If you think you can hire an ISA and then just throw stuff at them and walk away and not check in with them, not spend any time with them. In fact, if that's what your vision of a successful ISA is, I would challenge you to rethink that.
Yes.
If you're looking at pursuing an ISA in your organization because you just want to turn your back on it and say, I'm done, let someone else do it, there's still going to be a level of training involved, even if you outsource them to our program. I mean, we have an amazing training platform within our program, but you still have to connect with your ISA to check in to inspect what you expect. You're never getting away from that. There's never any, complete wash your hands of a certain aspect of the business.
Yeah.
You'll have to manage it at some level.
Yeah. That sounds right on point. And actually, I'll go ahead and give you guys some metrics that you want to be watching. So write these down. And by the way, these aren't specific to inside sales agents. Remember, inside sales agents, outside sales agents, they're really lead generators and lead converters, which agents are too, right? And so maybe they're not talking to as many people if they're an agent because they're not doing it all day. The percentages should be the same because it's a percentage, right? Mm-hmm. And so here's some good benchmarks. Everybody write this down. Your dial to contact should be 12% or higher. Now, I would never set a dial goal for an ISA, and I'll say that again because I hear it a lot. I would never set a dial goal for an ISA. It's my personal opinion. And here's why, is it's really not an indication of skill. It's more an indication of strategic lists, or am I calling a good list? But whether or not someone picks up the phone is not necessarily an indication of my actual ability. And I know this is not one of my prouder moments. I'm just going to be real with y'all, okay? I was an ISA for a long time. And I know that when my manager gave me dial goals, this was in another industry, but there would be days where I think it's getting towards the end of the day. I have to have a certain amount of dials today. Let me pull up this list that I can plow through and get my dials. I know not a lot of people pick up on this list, and I have a dial goal to hit. So I got to hit it. And I'm not saying I'm proud of that. I'm just saying that's the reality. You get what you expect. So if you are expecting dials, you'll get dials. Dials mean absolutely nothing. You want contacts, because contacts lead to appointments, which leads to closings. However, do track dial to contact, because that will tell you, do we have a good list? Is it a good time of day? Is this a list that makes sense to call? So you want 12% or higher. The only exception to that would be maybe you're circle calling a neighborhood that's high priced. You really want in that neighborhood. Maybe it's the downtown area and you want to own that neighborhood. Then it might make sense to say, okay, I'll drop it down, but it's strategic. It's not just random. You're doing that on purpose. Then your contact to set ratio, and I cannot emphasize this enough, it will depend on your lead sources. So make sure that you are aware of that. The average, when you put all lead sources together, so this is sign calls, expired, FSBO, the occasional circle call. When you put all of them together, you should expect 5%, that's 1 out of 20, to become an appointment. And, but I'll tell you, if they're only circle calling, 1%, 2% would actually be really great. In fact, really great. So again, you got to know your lead sources, but all mixed together, 5% contact to set. Set to held, 70% is what you should expect. I see a lot of people come into the program. They're at 40%, 50%. I just had a team 3 weeks in, they've got it up 18%. Up. They were at 40. They were up to 58 just 3 weeks into the program. So again, we've got some tools to help you. So contact to set should be 5%, set to held 70%, held to signed, again, that should be 80%, and then signed to close should be 80%. Once they sign, that's not up to the ISA at that point. I look at it like until they sign, I'm keeping watch of that client. Once they sign, the agent's got it. Yeah, I still need to track it as an ISA, because at the end of the day, I need to know, what does it take for me to bring you a closing? So I need to know, yeah, this many people signed, but how many of them actually become a closing? And that way I can predict and forecast the numbers I need to get you that closing. Hopefully that all makes sense. Anything to add to that, Katie, as far as tracking and metrics to be watching?
Tagline: success is a numbers game.
Yeah.
There's literally a math formula that we utilize to help our ISAs identify the specific activity they need to do on a daily basis to garner the success of hitting their goals.
Yep. And you know what's cool is usually when we break down the numbers, the most common response isn't, I'm overwhelmed, how can I do that? The most common response is, oh, I think I should raise my goal. That is the number one most common response that we get when we break down what they want to bring in closings to their daily goal. At least that's what I found. So It's good. I mean, when they know their numbers, it's empowering, and most of them do raise their goal. It's actually a really cool exercise. The other thing we want to talk through is how long it takes to see the return. So if I hire an ISA today and they start today, when should I expect to see the results of their efforts come in? So Katie, I'll let you take that one.
So anybody that we hire in our organization, ISA or agent, we always tell them to have a savings fund set up before they join of about 6 months. That's our threshold. And the reason is it's some agents might come into it and we have some hotter, fresher leads that have already been through the pipeline a bit, and we turn them on to those. So they're a little bit further along. And in other situations, they're generating the pipeline, the very first stages of identifying, doing the slow churn of finding that one person that's like, yeah, I'm thinking about selling my house, right? So on average, we say 6 months.
Yeah.
6 months is the timeline to see that pipeline generate and mature into a closing to get paid.
Yep. Yeah. And I would say that's very healthy. I know when I started, I came in with the knowledge already, and I knew how to convert leads. I just had to learn real estate. And Haro told me it'll probably be 90 days before you really see the results of your effort. And I remember thinking, I bet I'll see it sooner because I have experience. And you know what? I had a couple that came early, but I remember this point in time when my phone started ringing more. I was doing less outbound because I was actually getting inbound calls of people actually calling me back. And it was right around that 90-day mark. Because I remember looking at the calendar thinking, this is weird. Oh, yeah, Haro told me 90 days. And sure enough, it was right around that 90-day mark that things really started to happen for me. But think about that. It's 90 days to get the leads finally ready. But then they meet with an agent. It's a good 45 days to get to closing. So that's why it can take that, 6 months or so to see the actual fruit of the labor. So it can, if you're not aware of that, you can perceive this isn't working or I'm not getting anywhere. And remember, ISA and just lead gen in general, lead conversion, it's a long-term game. It's the consistency over time is where you see it really pay off. And really where you really see it pay off is year 2. If you're an ISA on the call, especially in your first 6 months, hang in there because the job gets a lot more fun the longer you're in the role. I remember it started to feel like I'm talking to my friends. I've talked to this lady 3 times and I feel like I know about her dog and her husband and I get to talk to her again today. And oh, yay, she's finally ready. And so, but it does take time to build those relationships.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll say this too, to bear in mind as a rainmaker and you're hiring ISAs, there's nothing wrong with high turnover during the onboarding time. I think sometimes we might bring somebody into the role and then have reservations and try to make it fit because we don't want to have high turnover in our company. Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with parting ways during that onboarding time. That's the time to do it.
Yeah.
Turnover is negative when it's individuals that have been with you for a year, 2 years, and then you see them all leaving at like a 2-year mark or something. Then I would have some really self-examining questions to ask myself. But early on, we have this saying of fire your failures fast, and it sounds negative, and I think it just works because of alliteration, FFF. But what it is it's about identifying what specifically is the gap. Where are they not meeting my expectation? What specific activity do they need to do? And what's the timeline I'm going to give them to improve? Yeah. And you have to have those conversations during that 90-day trial period and hold them accountable to doing it. And then what I've also noticed is if you put the standard on the individual and you say, here's the standard, here's the activity that needs to be done, here's the timeline, and they don't do it, they're not happy. Yeah. They want to quit. You don't even have to fire them. You just give them permission to leave the organization, right? And it becomes a much easier way to handle the situation, which also leads to you stop avoiding it, right? Let's face it full on and figure it out now before it becomes a problem down the road.
Yeah. And also one thing that was a huge takeaway for me from the first 2 people I hired is, and they were both excellent people. It's that there was just one in particular that just wasn't the right fit for that specific role. She's an excellent person. And I was tolerating, I think partially because I was like, I don't want my first hire to not work out. And, the other girl that I hired at the same time was doing much better. And she said to me at one point, she was like, I was starting to question your leadership because you were tolerating the low performance. And that was a huge wake-up call to me because as crazy as it sounds now, it was like I hadn't stopped to think about what are the other people on the team that are the right fit? What are they taking away from me as a leader tolerating someone not hitting the standard? I'm sending a message. And so that was a huge learning lesson for me. So yeah, make sure that you really hold them tight to that standard. There is, we don't have one to share right here, but if you go to ISA Mastermind group on Facebook, under the files section, I uploaded a 30, 60, 90-day onboarding. It's completely customized to the Haro group, the team that I come from. But you could take a look at that and just get an idea of what are some good standards for the first 30 days, the first 60 days, the first 90 days to see, is this person really the right fit? So you're welcome to go in there and download that.
Awesome. That's great.
Cool.
I hadn't thought from that perspective, honestly, of the other person thinking, what are you doing? That's brilliant.
Yeah, it was really humbling actually as a leader to hear that because I was like, dang, I had never thought about that. But it's interesting. I'm much more involved now in Strength Finder, Gallup. If any of you have ever heard of that out there, a lot of people have heard of Gallup, if not Strength Finder. But what's really cool is they have some other tools out there. It's not only Strength Finder. They also have a tool called the Q12, which It's a tool to engage, I can't talk. It's a tool to gauge employee engagement. So it's one of those things where we all know that culture is important, but how do you measure culture, right? Like I know how to measure a P&L. I know how to measure how many closings I have coming in or my conversion rates. But how do I measure how happy my employees are, right? By how often they smile at me or how many notes they send me? Like, how do I measure employee engagement and culture? And so Gallup created a tool for that. And there's only 12 questions on there. And one of the questions is centered around, I feel like the people around me they care about the work at the level I do. That's not quite how they word the question. But it's that idea of, I'm on a team with other people that care about what we're doing and they care about quality and they're working hard. And if that question isn't answered with a positive, you are at risk of losing a talented team member because talent wants to be around talent. So that's why I said with the ROI activity, figure out what your standard is your standard has to be a non-negotiable. If they're not bringing you that ROI or that amount of closings, it actually means that this is going to lead to us not being on the same team if they don't get their performance up. We're not going to work together. And part of that is, one, it protects your money, but two, it actually helps the whole culture of the team perform better. Talent wants to be around other people that are bringing their A game.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that 100%.
All right, so we've got about 10 minutes left. If you have questions, type them in. Katie, did you have anything else you wanted to make sure that you covered before?
Honestly, the way I've looked at this webinar today is I've just thought of all the things you don't want to do. I think of all the stories I hear in my coaching calls. I think of all the experiences I've had in a team that's grown a lot in a short period of time. And I've got to say a big area that we misstep a lot is expectations. Yeah. So there's one thing I want to stress the most on this call is sit down, set up expectations before you even start to look for that ISA. Get more clarity around what you expected them, what you think it's going to look like, training, managing their output, what type of leads they're going to bring in and who they're going to call. Yeah. And then be very crystal clear with them on it. It's the same advice I'd give you when you're working with any client, right? Set their expectations up front. And it's going to lead for a much smoother transaction. So it's the same mindset, really and truly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's the biggest pitfall I see.
Well, I just thought of one other thing, and we'll finish with this unless anybody has a question. If you do, now's the time. The window is closing. Yeah. But I just recently in the ISA group, I just posted the question, what's one thing that you wish people knew about your role? And there's 3,000 some people in this group. Primarily ISA. So I was curious, what am I going to hear and what's the topic? What's the hot button? The overwhelming majority of them responded, it really gets to me when people say just an ISA or they view it as a stepping stone role. So let's talk about that for a minute. This is a true story. I'm like, I'm going to sit up in my chair. So I was in the office one day, and let me preface this by saying I have a ton of respect for the people in the story I'm about to tell you. And we worked it all out, okay? But I was in the office one day lead generating, and part of what motivated me as an inside sales agent was I understood that when I set appointments, it helped that agent standing over there achieve their goals. It helped them pay for their mortgage. It helped them, send kids to college, whatever their goals are. And so my heart was, I care to help these people succeed. So imagine that heart. And by the way, a lot of ISAs see it that way. They see it as a supportive lead gen role that helps other people succeed. So I'm sitting there with that mindset, and I overheard two agents saying our role is more respectable than the ISA role. So I was like, excuse me, what are you saying? And they really dug in their heels and they said, well, our job's a lot more respectable than yours. And they even went to the point to say, you're like the hand, we're the brain. It would be inconvenient to live without you, but we could do it because we're the brain. What? So first of all, if you're thinking that, you don't say it to the person. But second of all, why are you even thinking this? So we had a conversation around this. And the thing is, I don't agree with that mindset. First of all, we need the whole team. Because if I'm an ISA setting for agents and the agents aren't there, well, then I'm not succeeding either. So it's not that one's better or lesser. It's we all got to work together here. But the other thing is, Gary talks about the activity of lead gen, lead conversion is the #1 most dollar productive activity. And so where did this mindset come from? of this thinking. And so anyway, I just asked them, where did this come from? And they said, well, we start as ISAs and then we graduate to agents. And that was a big takeaway for me because it was how we were talking about the role. So what I would encourage you guys to do is if you plan to have people start as ISAs and then move into the agent role, that's a whole nother conversation. But make sure that you call it agent in training if your intention is to have a long-term ISA department. And here's why. Is if we say everybody, ISA, buyer agent, listing agent, we all start as an agent in training. And then after you pass that 90-day mark, you either are a listing agent, a buyer agent, or an inside sales agent. It helps equalize the role and it can reduce those culture issues. The other thing that was awesome was Haro, the team owner, he completely got behind me. And when we were in team meetings and people said, oh, I just had a closing yesterday, he would say things like, that's awesome. Who set that appointment for you? Or where did that appointment come from? And it very quickly changed the tone. And it was actually pretty awesome to see the way we came together as a family and worked through that. But it was painful. And I've had ISAs say in that Facebook group, they'll message me and say, you know, I actually really like the activity of what I'm doing, but I'm considering leaving my team because I feel like they just see me as like this entry-level person. And I don't think of myself that way. I like what I do and I feel like I'm talented. So make sure that you don't talk about the role as if it's this lesser than role or it's just an ISA or it's just entry level. It's actually the lifeblood of your business. Whether you're an agent or an ISA, whoever is doing lead gen, that is the lifeblood that allows everything else to happen. So we want to keep that, make sure we keep it in the right regard.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think that's a great perspective to share. I have to say, as the agent on the team, as a listing agent, I would push myself to take clients that I did not want to work with because my ISA said it and I wanted them to get the bonus.
I love that. Well, there you go. There's that mindset of that team, right? Like that's, as an ISA, I love that, Katie. But really, like, as an ISA, that's how I used to feel about Annalisa. Like, I knew that Annalisa genuinely cared about the people I set for her, and we had great communication. It just made me want to set more. Just that heart of, I know her goals, we know their goals, we want everybody to achieve their goals. So let's do stuff that maybe we don't want to do to help everybody succeed. I think that's awesome.
Yeah. Okay, so it looks like we have some questions here. The first one, Brandy Matheson Klein, what are your thoughts on bonuses for nurtures? It's a great question. So that's a different model than what we've been mainly talking about, but that is a model that the Heil Group follows where I'm from here in Austin. And we actually have a hybrid model. So early on in this webinar, Anna made the statement that there are a million different ways to do this, and they're all the right ways so long as they're working for your team. I will say that on our team, we have a group of junior agents who source nurtures, and as they're sourcing nurtures in their training program, they are paid a $50 nurture bonus. Once they graduate through the training program, which takes about 6 months, then they are full dual agents, both listing and buyer agents, and they now qualify to have ISA appointments set for them, and they still fish out of the nurture pond and are contacting the nurtures that they either set for themselves or the next batch of junior agents is setting. So in that scenario, we don't offer our junior agents a base salary. We are strictly paying them $50 per nurture. And there's two reasons why we do this. One, we know that if they're hitting their nurture goal, the $50 per nurture is going to be comparable to a base salary of about $2,000 a month. Okay. And two, the reason why I don't know how else to say this other than say get away with paying them less, is because they're in a paid training program. It's a temporary paid training program that they're going to graduate out of and become full-fledged licensed agents and make agent money at a different split, so to speak. Yeah. So that is one avenue that we have. But like I mentioned earlier, we also have full-time ISA OSAs who are also putting appointments on their calendar for them. What we've done is created an environment where agents can take advantage of team set appointments by ISA OSAs, as well as fish from a pond and get a higher split off of those team leads as well. So we have a hybrid model. So I'm all for it. What you have to keep in mind is inspect what you expect. Are they actual nurtures?
Yeah.
So for us, we have a virtual assistant who listens to every recorded call that has been identified as a nurture and grades it and makes sure it hits our 5 criteria of a nurture. Otherwise, you're paying them to put junk in your pipeline.
Yeah.
And that's no good.
And we don't want that. Yeah. Yeah. And Katie, if people want to contact you either about coaching, because Katie is one of our coaches, and I know she has room right now to take additional clients. And clearly she knows what she's talking about. By the way, she sold 144 homes her first year. So she really knows her stuff. She just put it in the chat box. It's katie@hilerealestate.com. You can also go to isamapscoaching.com. But if you want to reach Katie directly, that's where you can do it about that model or anything else. And then MJ said, what do some rainmakers do to reward unlicensed? And I would check with your team leader just because different states can vary. So I'll give the general answer and then just double check because I want to make sure that you're covered and you're doing things the right way for your state and the way that they do things. Because if they're unlicensed, it can just be a different animal. By the way, I was unlicensed for my first year and I still had a lot of success, enjoyed what I was doing. In South Carolina, the way we were set up, it was fine. So for unlicensed, what that usually looks like is a higher base pay because they're not getting the commission opportunity. So it usually looks like a higher base pay and then a set bonus amount per closing. And you can't do it based on price because now it looks like commission and they're unlicensed. So again, I talk to your team leader, talk to a local broker just to make sure you're doing this right for where you live. But generally speaking, it is a set bonus amount for bringing you a closing. I will say, and this wasn't in the question yet, I'm going to just put it out there. Once I got licensed, I felt my strategy changed. And I always considered myself a go-getter. I never was purposely not being strategic. But when I started realizing I'm licensed now I get a commission. And so I can make more or less money depending on price point. I started getting very strategic about my price points I was calling. And it actually helped raise the price point of the whole team because the appointments coming from the ISA department were now higher. I had a specific focus on making them higher priced because I wanted to make, hey, if I'm going to set an appointment to make this much or this much, I'd rather make this much. And so if you, there's various reasons you might have them be unlicensed, but I really do encourage, usually you see better results when they're licensed because the motivation level is a little different. Okay, Katie, I'm going to let you answer that last question that came in from Corey. I actually need to hop off, guys, for my next call, but Katie said she can hang on. So thanks, guys. It was really great to see you today, and Katie, take it from here.
Okay. All right. So how do you keep track of nurtures? That's a great question. What we do on our team is we have everybody has their auto dialer. It's on Mojo. As soon as I have a conversation with somebody that meets our 5 nurture criteria, they then load that nurture into a form set that's attached to a spreadsheet, as well as they put that nurture into our CRM. So this is what it looks like. I'm on the phone, I'm talking to somebody, here are the 5 criteria. They're motivated to sell their house. They have real motivation. Their timeline is within 12 months or less. I almost said 12 minutes, 12 months or less. There's an opportunity for our agent to work with them, meaning they haven't already signed with somebody else. They aren't an agent themselves, right? They give us their contact information, their phone number, that includes their email address and the address of the property they intend to sell. And then the 5th criteria is they tell us when to follow back up with them. So they say, yeah, I'm interested, 12 months. I'm going to be transferring my job location to Denver. I know it's coming and I haven't signed anything with anybody else yet. And since I'm not going to be ready to go till the end of this year, why don't you just call me back, say, I don't know, September. Okay, that is a nurture in our book. Oh, and my email is katie@hilerealestate.com. That in our book constitutes as a nurture. So I would be putting them into my Boomtown CRM. Now we have Salesforce. Under nurture category, I'd be writing all of those notes in on our conversation, right? But in order to track it, I pull up a different field. It's a form set attached to Smartsheet. And Smartsheet is just like Excel, and it has the 5 criteria. You know, what's their motivation, what's their timeline, their contact information, and when do we follow up. And I type that all in. Every week, our ISA is going into the recorded calls on Mojo and cross-checking what they're hearing with the notes in that form set and grading it. And sometimes our ISA would say, or sorry, our BA would say, not a nurture, you didn't get their email. And what they do is they email the agent directly who made the call, as well as their supervisor, saying, here's why it didn't pass the test. And then it's really simple. We just coach our junior agent to get back on the phone and get the email address or get that missing piece. So that's essentially how we're tracking it, inspecting what we're expecting to ensure that everything that's being uploaded into our CRM into the nurture category is authentic. Okay. If they're already a nurture, no. Yeah. Any other questions, guys? Okay. All right. Well, if you do have any other questions, this kind of, oh, no new question. Okay. If you do have any other, Corey pre-qualifies the seller, the agent, or the ISA. Both. Great question. The ISA pre-quals sets the appointment. When the agent calls to confirm, they re-pre-qualify them again. I was told early on by Tim, our rainmaker, I never get to poo-poo the appointments that my ISA set because I have the opportunity to call, confirm, and inspect what I expect of a good appointment. If I feel it's not a good appointment and I cancel it, it's a coaching opportunity for that ISA to identify what specific elements of that conversation actually didn't jive with our pre-qualification requirements. So we both do it. I want to protect my time, ensure the quality of the lead. And honestly, when I'm at the actual appointment, I'm requalifying them again, specifically touching on their motivation. I find that especially expireds withdrawals are the most honest with me when I'm face-to-face with them, and I get more insight. I've had many people tell me when I'm in their home, okay, Katie, the real reason we're selling is because I lost my job, right? So you can't overqualify somebody, in my opinion. So yeah. Okay, you're totally welcome, Corey. Thank you for your questions. If you guys have any more questions for me, please shoot me an email. If you're ready to sign up for the program, click the link that's in the chat box, and we're happy to enroll you guys and answer any additional questions you might have about the program as well. Thank you guys for your time today, and I hope you have a happy rest of your week. Thanks. Bye.